Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into something a little more comfortable, the entire history of the nightgown. We're going all the way back to a time when sleepwear was less about silk and lace and more about, well, not freezing to death in a stone castle. You might miss your central heating and memory foam mattress after this, but I promise, it's a cozy journey. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere interesting, maybe drifting off in a bustling city or a quiet town, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me your city and the time there right now. It's always fun to see where this little sleepy community is gathering. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Section 1. You are standing on a floor of cold, packed earth, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and the faint, ever-present scent of damp stone. It's the 12th century, and this is your bedroom, which is also, probably, your family's main room. There's no concept of pajamas here, no special outfit reserved for the sacred act of sleep. The fire is banked for the night, and a profound, damp chill is already seeping into the room. You shiver, and your fingers fumble with the simple, practical garment you've worn all day under your heavier clothes, the shift. This is it. The great-grandmother of all sleepwear. It's a long, T-shaped tunic of undyed, rough-spun linen, falling to about your knees. It's baggy, it's scratchy, and it is spectacularly unglamorous. You pull it over your head, there are no delicate buttons or ties, and the fabric, cold from the room's air, settles against your skin with a sobering reality. This single garment is the universal underwear, the base layer for everyone from the lowliest peasant to the king himself. The main difference? There might be a finer linen, maybe even soft lawn, but the cut is essentially the same. You are, quite literally, all wearing the same foundational skin. The primary purpose of this humble shift at night is brutally simple: insulation. Your bed, if you're lucky, is a sack stuffed with straw, and blankets are a precious commodity. The linen of your shift creates a crucial layer of air between your skin and the heavier, often itchy, woolen blankets you pull up to your chin. It's a barrier, a way to trap a sliver of body heat in a world where the night is genuinely dark and full of terrors, or at least, full of chills. Forget about fashion, this is about survival basics. You're not thinking about how you look, you're thinking about making it to dawn without your teeth chattering themselves loose. Now for a piece of trivia that might make you squirm. That shift you're wearing? You don't wash it every day. Water is heavy to haul, soap is harsh, and the concept of daily bathing is centuries away. In fact, the linen shift's practicality extends to its role as a body soil guard. The theory goes that since linen is easier to wash and dry than the heavy outer woolen garments, it protects them from the grime of the body. You, and everyone in your household, would regularly change your shift, but your outer clothes, well, they might see a brushing, but a full wash is a rare and major undertaking. Historians still debate just how often the average medieval person changed their linens, with estimates ranging from weekly to, let's just say, much less frequently. The idea was that the linen protected your outer clothes from your body, not necessarily that you felt fresh as a daisy every morning. So you climb into your straw-filled bed, the coarse linen of your shift rustling softly. You pull the heavy woolen covers up, and as you lie there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the house settling, you realize this isn't about comfort in the way we understand it. It's about a simple, functional barrier against the world. It's the same garment a knight might wear under his chainmail, the same a farmer wears in the fields. In the profound darkness of a medieval night, social distinctions blur, and everyone, from lord to servant, is just a person in a simple linen shift, waiting for the sun to rise and bring a little warmth back into the world. Section 2. The straw in your mattress prickles through the coarse sheet as you shift, the lingering chill of the medieval room still clinging to your linen shift. But time is moving forward, and the world outside your bedchamber is changing. The strict feudal order is slowly giving way to something new, and with it, the concept of privacy and domestic life begins to, just barely, take root. You are now in a Tudor-era household, and the 16th century is dawning. The stone walls might be a little better plastered, the windows perhaps glazed with horn, but the cold is still a persistent nighttime companion. It's here, in this era of merchant wealth and global exploration, that you witness a subtle but monumental shift, the birth of a garment meant just for sleeping. You're no longer pulling on the same knee-length shift you wore under your day clothes. Instead, you reach for a dedicated bed shirt. At first glance, it's not radically different, it's still a simple, long shirt of linen. But the key is in the details. It's longer, often reaching down to your ankles, providing more coverage against the drafts that slither across the floor. The cut is roomier, allowing for easier movement as you sleep. This is no longer just a base layer, this is a specialized tool for the specific activity of being in bed. For the first time, you are changing your clothes for sleep, a small ritual that separates the day's labors from the night's rest. This specialization is a luxury, a quiet signal of status. While the poorest in society are still sleeping in their daywear or a single, ragged shift, the burgeoning middle class, the merchants, the skilled artisans, are adopting this practice. Owning a garment that has no purpose other than to be worn in the privacy of your bedchamber is a sign that you have surplus. It means you have enough linen, enough wealth, to dedicate an entire article of clothing to an unseen, private part of your life. Your bedshirt is a testament to your comfort, a declaration that your home is secure and prosperous enough to warrant such a nicety. It's a small, soft flag of middle-class identity. Now, for a wonderfully peculiar detail you'd only notice up close. The neckline of your new, longer bedshirt. It's often reinforced with a subtle, narrow band of sturdier fabric or a simple drawstring. Why? This isn't just for durability. This is the precursor to the nightcap's domain. The theory was that securing the neckline helped to keep drafts from sneaking down your chest and back, a primary fear in the era's medical understanding of night air. You creating a more sealed sleeping environment from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. It's a practical innovation born from a deep-seated fear of illness. Of course, historians love to debate the nuances of this transition. The main point of contention isn't if dedicated sleepwear emerged in this period, but how quickly and how universally it was adopted. The written records, wills, household inventories, start to clearly list bedshirts separately from shifts, but the pace of this change from the noble classes down to the rural poor is a patchy picture, debated estate inventory by estate inventory. It's a quiet revolution happening one household at a time. So you settle back into your bed, the long folds of your dedicated bedshirt pooling around your ankles. It's still linen, it's still simple, but it carries a new meaning. It's a garment of intention, of a life lived with slightly more order and designated spaces. As you blow out the tallow candle, the flame puttering into smoke, you feel a little more civilized, a little more modern. The night is still dark, and the house still creaks, but you are no longer just a person in your day clothes, waiting for dawn. You are a person in your night clothes, ready for sleep. Section 3. The long hem of your Tudor bedshirt brushes against the floorboards as you sit on the edge of the bed, the night air feeling distinctly menacing. You're not just fighting the cold now, you're fighting an idea. The 16th and 17th centuries are gripped by a pervasive medical theory, the miasma, the belief that night air itself is poisonous, laden with damp, disease-ridden vapors that can seep into your body and cause everything from a common chill to the plague. Before you even think about sliding under the covers, there's one more crucial piece of armor to don. You reach for your nightcap. This isn't a fashion statement, it's a medical necessity in the minds of everyone you know. You pull the close-fitting, often knitted cap over your head, tying it securely under your chin. It's a barrier, a seal. The human head was considered particularly vulnerable to these nighttime miasmas, and keeping it warm and covered was as fundamental as locking your door at night. You're not just preventing a chill, you're warding off sickness itself. In an era before germ theory, this simple act feels as logical and life-saving as washing your hands feels to us today. Everyone does it, men, women, children. To go to bed bareheaded would be an act of reckless folly. Now, let's talk about the materials, because this is where it gets wonderfully strange. Your nightcap might be made of practical, warm wool or soft linen. But if you're of a more superstitious or affluent bent, you might own a nightcap infused with other properties. Some were stuffed with aromatic herbs like lavender or rosemary, not just for the pleasant scent, but because these plants were believed to purify the very air you breathed. Others, seeking more potent protection, might have caps containing Dr. I'd earthworms or even a sprinkling of powdered mercury, substances thought to draw out disease or balance the body's humors. You're not just wearing a hat, you're wearing a portable, personal apothecary on your head, a testament to the blend of practical wisdom and profound superstition that defined pre-modern medicine. The style of your nightcap could also be a subtle social signal. A simple, monochrome knitted cap marks you as a commoner. But a wealthier individual might sport a more elaborate big gin, a cap often made of finer materials like velvet or silk, perhaps embroidered with blackwork, a popular style of geometric stitching. It's a small, private luxury, a hint that even in the vulnerability of sleep, your status remains. You are defending yourself against the malign night air, but you're doing it with a touch of elegance. Here's a point where academic debate pops up. While the widespread use of nightcaps is undeniable, historians still argue over the primary driver behind their near-universal adoption. Was it purely the fear of miasma? Was it a more practical response to the genuine, biting cold of underheated homes. Or was it, as some suggest, also a response to the contemporary practice of shaving the head either for hygiene or to accommodate the elaborate wigs that were coming into fashion, which left people feeling acutely vulnerable to the cold? The answer is likely a tangled knot of all three, a perfect example of how practical need, medical theory, and social custom are woven together as tightly as the threads of the cap itself. So you finally lie down, your head securely swaddled in its protective layer. The world outside your curtained bed is dark and full of unseen threats, but you've taken your precautions. The nightcap presses softly against you. Your temples, a reassuring weight in the profound silence. It's a small, slightly silver-looking piece of cloth, but in this moment, it is your helmet, your talisman, your first line of defense against the dangerous, breathing darkness of the pre-dawn hours. Section 4. The gentle pressure of your nightcap is a familiar comfort, a sentinel against the perils of the night air. But as the 17th century unfolds around you, a new kind of garment begins to rustle in the corridors of power and wealth, one that has nothing to do with the practicalities of sleep and everything to do with the theater of status. You find yourself not in a bedchamber preparing for sleep, but in a grand, sunlit withdrawing room of a nobleman's house, the morning light filtering through leaded glass windows. You are not wearing your bedshirt. You are wearing a nightgown. Forget everything you think you know about the word. This is not a delicate, feminine garment. This is a man's world of opulent display. The nightgown we're talking about is, in essence, a magnificent, robe-like coat, often made of sumptuous fabrics like velvet, damask, or richly patterned silk brocade. It's voluminous, with wide, hanging sleeves and a full skirt that sweeps the floor as you move. You don it over your shirt and breeches, not to sleep in, but to receive morning visitors, conduct household business, or lounge in your library. This is the pinnacle of informal, at-home wear for the elite gentleman, a garment that screams, "I am so wealthy, I have clothes for the specific purpose of not yet being fully dressed." The key to understanding this garment is the concept of privacy, or the lack thereof. The bedchamber and the adjoining withdrawing rooms in a great house were semi-public spaces. Important guests, business associates, or social inferiors might be granted an audience with you here in the morning, before you had donned your formal, restrictive court attire. Your nightgown is your costume for this performance. Its richness, the depth of the pile on the velvet, complexity of the Chinese-inspired patterns on the silk, the weight of the gold thread embroidery, visually communicates your power and taste. You are at your ease, but you are still very much on display, a king in his informal court. Now, for a wonderfully specific and slightly absurd detail. The linings of these extravagant nightgowns were often made of equally expensive, but sometimes bizarrely chosen, materials. While silk was common, some of the most luxurious were lined with fine, dressed furs like sable or ermine, even in climates where such insulation was utterly impractical. It was a hidden extravagance, a secret known only to you, the wearer, as the smooth fur slid against the fine linen of your shirt. It was the 17th century equivalent of having the interior of your car upholstered in something ridiculously opulent, a private pleasure and a testament to no expense spared luxury. Of course, historians love to pick apart the semantics here. There is an ongoing debate about the precise terminology and the distinction between a nightgown, a morning gown, and the banyan, which we'll get to next. The lines are blurry, and the terms were often used interchangeably in household accounts and diaries. Was it a nightgown specifically for the bedchamber, while a morning gown was for slightly more public spaces? The debate hinges on parsing the context of individual diary entries and portraits, a reminder that historical categories are often much messier than we'd like them to be. So you stand there, the heavy silk of your nightgown settling on your shoulders with an authoritative weight. The fabric whispers of privilege with every slight movement you make. You haven't even had your morning chocolate yet, but you are already engaged in the work of upholding your social position. The simple, sleeping body in its bedshirt is far away, hidden in the privacy of the actual bed. Out here, in the soft light of the morning, you are not a man resting, you are a statement, wrapped in velvet and brocade, performing the daily ritual of being important. Section 5. The weight of that velvet nobleman's nightgown is still a phantom pressure on your shoulders, its formality a subtle constraint. But as the intellectual currents of the 18th century begin to swirl, the Age of Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason, nature, and personal liberty, a new style of at-home wear emerges that offers a different kind of statement. You slip out of the stiff brocade and into the comfortable, exotic folds of a banyan. This isn't just a change of clothes, it's a change of philosophy. The banyan arrives in Europe from the trading companies in the East, inspired by the Japanese kimono and the Indian robes encountered by merchants. It's a T-shaped, loose-fitting robe, typically made from beautiful, patterned fabrics like Indian chintz, Chinese silk, or fine English wool. It's simpler in cut than the formal nightgown, lacking the complex tailoring and heavy structure. As you tie the sash around your waist, you feel an immediate sense of ease and freedom of movement. This garment is the physical embodiment of a leisure in the new, enlightened sense. It's for thinking, reading, writing letters, and conversing with intimate friends in the comfort of your own home. Wearing a banyan becomes a symbol of a certain kind of identity. It's the preferred attire of the intellectual, the scholar, the philosopher, and the gentleman of taste who values comfort and informality over rigid court ceremony. In portraits, men are often painted in their banyans, surrounded by globes, books, and scientific instruments. It signals a mind at work, a person engaged in the pursuit of knowledge rather than the pursuit of position. It's a quiet rebellion against the powdered wigs, tight coats, and restrictive breaches of formal public life. In your banyan, why? Oh, you are not a courtier, you are a citizen of the Republic of Letters. Now, for a delightful piece of sartorial trivia. The patterns on these banyans were often a story in themselves. The imported Indian chintz fabrics were particularly prized, featuring elaborate hand-block prints of exotic flora and fauna, palm trees, peacocks, and intricate botanical scenes. But here's the twist: European textile manufacturers, desperate to compete, began producing their own versions. They would create these banyan patterns, often getting the details hilariously wrong. A tiger might look more like a strange dog, or a tropical flower might be confused with a European rose. Wearing one of these was like wearing a map of European colonial imagination, a blend of accurate observation and pure fantasy. Scholars are still untangling the nuanced social language of the banyan. While it's clear it represented informality and intellectualism, there's a lively debate about just how rebellious it truly was. Was it a genuine sartorial protest against the aristocracy, or was it simply a new form of luxury and status-making for an emerging bourgeois elite? After all, a finely made, imported silk banyan was an expensive item. Was it a rejection of the system, or just a more comfortable way to participate in it? The answer probably lies somewhere in the middle, depending on the individual wearing it. So you wander over to your bookshelf, the soft, flowing sleeves of your banyan allowing your arms to move freely. You pull down a volume of new philosophy or perhaps a novel, a newly popular form of entertainment. Settling into a comfortable armchair by the fire, you feel a sense of modern contentment. The banyan isn't about displaying wealth to morning visitors, it's about creating a private world, where your mind can roam as freely as your body. It's a garment for the self, a soft, beautiful shell for the emerging modern individual. Section 6. The soft, painted silk of your banyan feels like a dream against your skin, a symbol of a more contemplative life. But a revolution is brewing, one that has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with texture. It's the late 17th century, flowing into the 18th, and a new material is arriving from the East that will fundamentally alter the very feel of daily life, especially the life you live in the intimate hours of the night. You are about to experience the cotton revolution. For centuries, your options for clothing that touched your skin were limited. Linen was the standard, durable, but often coarse and scratchy, especially for the majority of people. Wool was warm but could be unbearably itchy. And silk was a fantasy for all but the richest. Then, thanks to the British and Dutch East India Companies, a flood of beautiful, soft, lightweight, and washable Indian cotton begins to pour into Europe. The first time you pull on a shift or a bedshirt made of this new fabric, it's a revelation. It's softer than linen, smoother than wool, and far more affordable than silk. It feels, quite simply, like comfort itself. This isn't just a minor upgrade, it's a complete overhaul of the sensory experience of dress and, by extension, sleep. Cotton is absorbent, drawing moisture away from your body in a way that linen can't quite match. It's easier to launder than wool, which felted and shrank, and it holds dye brilliantly, allowing for the vibrant, color-fast patterns that made chintz so desirable. Suddenly, the garment you wear against your skin for 8 or more hours a day can be not just practical, but genuinely pleasant. The night, which was once a time of enduring the scratchy and the stiff, becomes a period of relative sensory relief. Your skin can finally breathe. Now, here's the ironic and brutal twist in this cozy tale. The European love affair with Indian cotton was so intense that it nearly destroyed domestic textile industries. In a fit of protectionism, governments like Britain's banned the import of finished Indian chintz in the early 1700s. But the demand was too great. So, what did clever European manufacturers do? They illegally smuggled the fabrics, and more importantly, they reverse-engineered the complex dyeing and printing processes. They essentially industrialized espionage to learn how to make their own versions of the cloth, a practice that would eventually fuel their own industrial revolution. Your comfortable nightshirt is, in a way, a product of international trade wars and industrial theft. This leads to a point of historical debate. While the impact of cotton is undeniable, historians still argue about the primary engine of its widespread adoption. Was it consumer demand for comfort and beautiful patterns that drove the market, forcing industry and legislation to adapt? Or was it the entrepreneurial spirit and technological piracy of European manufacturers that eventually made cotton cheap and plentiful enough for the masses? Was it a revolution from the bottom up, driven by the desire for softer undergarments, or from the top down, by the engines of capital and industry? It was likely a powerful feedback loop, but the emphasis is still a matter of scholarly discussion. So, you lie down in your bed, the smooth, cool touch of a cotton bedshirt, a quiet luxury that your medieval ancestors could never have imagined. The fabric doesn't fight your skin, it accommodates it. The simple act of rolling over in your sleep is no longer a negotiation with coarse linen. This shift in material might seem small, but it's profound. It marks the beginning of a modern relationship with clothing, where comfort starts to become a right, not a privilege, and the night becomes a softer, kinder place. Section 7. The ghost of that soft Indian cotton still lingers on your skin, a promise of comfort to come. But as the 18th century matures into the Age of Enlightenment, a new ideal begins to take hold, one that values clarity, reason, and moral purity above all else. This philosophical shift sweeps through fashion, and it doesn't leave your nighttime wardrobe untouched. You find yourself in a well-ordered, neoclassical bedroom of the late 1700s, and the garment you pull over your head is a testament to this new mindset, the simple, stark white nightshirt. Color and pattern, for so long a sign of wealth and status, are now being pushed aside in favor of pristine whiteness. Your nightshirt is likely still made of linen or the increasingly popular cotton, but it is almost certainly white. This isn't an arbitrary aesthetic choice, it's a visual declaration of cleanliness, which in the Enlightenment imagination is intimately tied to both physical and moral virtue. A clean, white garment suggests a disciplined, orderly body and, by extension, a rational, enlightened mind. In the dark of the night, you are wrapping yourself in a symbol of purity and simplicity, a direct rejection of the perceived decadence and dishonesty of the ornate, colorful Baroque era that preceded it. The cut of your nightshirt reflects this new philosophy. It's straightforward, almost architectural. The ruffles and lace that might have trimmed a wealthy person's bedshirt a century earlier are now seen as frivolous and even slightly suspicious. The focus is on a clean line, a good fit that allows for movement but doesn't constrict, and a fabric that can be thoroughly boiled and bleached to a brilliant white. This is the era when public bathing is declining, but the theory of clean linen is ascending. The idea is that by frequently changing the white linen or cotton layer next to your skin, you are wicking away the body's impurities, protecting your health and your morals simultaneously. Now, for a wonderfully practical and slightly grim piece of trivia. Maintaining that perfect, virtuous whiteness was a brutal, labor-intensive process. It involved vast amounts of expensive soap, long hours of hand scrubbing, and, most importantly, bleaching. How was this achieved? The clean, white linens and cottons were often laid out in special open fields called bleaching greens. There, they were soaked with buttermilk or a lye solution and left for days or even weeks in the sun, being periodically wetted down again. The sun's ultraviolet light and the chemicals would slowly break down the stains and natural yellowness of the fabric. Your pristine white nightshirt was, quite literally, purified by the elements, a process as slow and deliberate as the philosophical era it represented. Of course, historians are still debating the true reach of this white ideal. While it's a dominant theme in the art, literature, and fashion plates of the elite, how far down the social ladder did this obsession with spotless white underwear truly trickle? For a poor farmer or a maidservant, owning multiple sets of easily soiled white linens was likely an impossible luxury. The scholarly argument continues over whether this was a widespread cultural practice or primarily an aspirational standard set by the upper classes, a visual marker that separated the civilized from the common folk. So you slip into your white nightshirt, the fabric smelling faintly of sunlight and soap. It feels crisp and clean against your skin, a small, daily ritual of moral and physical hygiene. As you extinguish your candle, the white fabric seems to glow faintly in the moonlight filtering through the window. You are no longer a Baroque noble embracing the dark, you are an enlightened individual, wrapped in a mantle of reason, preparing to rest a mind and body kept in rational, orderly condition. The night is for recuperation, and you are dressed appropriately for the task. Section 8. The crisp, rational whiteness of your Enlightenment nightshirt feels almost like a uniform for a well-ordered mind. But as the 18th century turns into the 19th, a powerful new cultural wind begins to blow, one that values feeling over thought, drama over calm, and the sublime beauty of the untamed. The Romantic era has arrived, and it's about to give your sleepwear a dramatic, almost theatrical, makeover. You are no longer just dressing for bed, you are dressing for a poetic reverie. The simple, column-like nightshirt is swept away, especially for women, by the nightgown of the Romantic period. And its most defining feature? The sleeves. Oh, the sleeves. You slide your arms into a garment whose sleeves are impossibly wide, flowing, and voluminous, gathered tightly at the shoulder before billowing out like the sails of a ghost ship and then being gathered again tightly at the wrist. This is the leg of mutton sleeve, and it turns your arms into a performance. Every gesture you make as you brush your hair or reach for a glass of water is imbued with a new, floating grace. The fabric, fine, sheer cotton like lawn or batiste, or even soft silk, adds to the ethereal effect. This isn't about practicality. In fact, it's profoundly impractical. These vast sleeves could easily knock over a bedside candle or dip into your wash basin. But that's entirely the point. The Romantic ideal of femininity was one of delicate sensibility, otherworldly beauty, and a fragile purity that needed to be protected. The nightgown, with its sheer fabrics and dramatic silhouette, visually communicates this. You are a vision of innocent vulnerability, a sleeping beauty in your own private castle. The garment is designed to be seen, if only by yourself in the mirror or by a maidsie. Rivant, as a work of art. Now, let's talk about the cold, hard truth beneath the poetic fantasy. Those breathtakingly wide sleeves? They were a nightmare to launder and required a staggering amount of fabric. To maintain their dramatic shape, they were often reinforced with hidden layers of stiffening, such as down-filled sleeve plumpers or subtle whalebone strips sewn into the seams. You might look like a delicate angel floating on a cloud, but the architecture holding up that illusion was surprisingly robust and cumbersome. It was a beautiful lie, stitched together with practicality, a perfect metaphor for the Romantic era itself. This shift in style leads to a fun historical debate. Art and fashion historians love to argue about the primary influence on this dramatic new silhouette. Was it a direct borrowing from the historicism of the period, a revival of the slashed and puffed sleeves of the Renaissance? Or was it more influenced by the theatrical costumes of the popular Gothic novels and stage melodramas of the time, where heroines were always fainting in equally dramatic attire? The answer is likely, again, a blend, but scholars enjoy picking apart portraits and fashion plates to trace the precise lineage of a puff. So you stand before your cheval glass, the vast sleeves of your white batiste nightgown making you look both fragile and magnificent. You are no longer a rationalist in a simple shirt, you are the heroine of your own story. As you blow out the lamp and the moonlight catches the delicate gathers of your sleeves, you feel a sense of poetic melancholy and beauty. The night is no longer just for rest, it's for dreaming, for feeling, for being transported to a world more beautiful and tragic than the day. And you are dressed for the journey. Section 9. The last echoes of your romantic sleeves whisper against the floorboards fade as a new, more rigid era settles over the bedroom. The poetic flourishes of the early 19th century are being meticulously stitched over by the strict, uncompromising hand of the Victorian era. You are in a heavily draped, over-furnished bedroom, and the air feels thick with rules. The delicate, expressive nightgown of your grandmother's time is now being scrutinized, tightened, and fortified against the greatest Victorian social terror, immodesty. Your new Victorian nightgown is a fortress of fabric. The high neckline, fastened with a tiny button that presses against your throat, is non-negotiable. The sleeves, while losing their dramatic volume, are still long, reaching all the way to your wrists. The overall cut is more fitted through the bodice, emphasizing a corseted shape even in sleep, before releasing into a full, ankle-length skirt. Every element is designed to cover, to conceal, to protect your virtue from yourself, and from the mere possibility of being seen. Even in the profound privacy of your own bed, in the pitch dark, the rules of propriety must be maintained. You are dressing for the judgment of an invisible, ever-present audience. This obsession with modesty extended to every single detail. The delicate embroidery that once adorned romantic nightgowns is now strategically deployed as a moral safeguard. A tuck of lace at the cuff, a ribbon run through the neckline, a series of neat tucks running down the bodice. These weren't just decorations, they were reinforcements. They added layers of opacity to the often sheer white cotton or linen, ensuring that no hint of the body beneath could be discerned. The nightgown became a uniform of purity, its very construction a daily lesson in self-control and moral vigilance. Now, for a piece of trivia that highlights the sheer absurdity of this sartorial prison. For the most devout or particularly cautious, there existed a garment known as a sleeping corset. It wasn't the fully boned, waist-cinching monster of the day, but it was a soft, lightly boned or corded bodice designed to be worn over the nightgown. The idea was to prevent the body from adopting ungraceful or deleterious postures in sleep and to further ensure the modesty of the sleeping form. Imagine trying to find restful sleep while encased in even a lightly structured canvas cage. It was the ultimate victory of social form over physical comfort. Unsurprisingly, historians are still picking apart the motivations behind this intense modesty panic. While the influence of Queen Victoria's personal morality and the rise of evangelical Christianity are clear, some scholars argue that the extreme covering up was also a subconscious reaction to the rapidly changing role of women in society. As the first whispers of suffrage and reform began to circulate, did this rigid control of the female form, even in its most private state, become a way to symbolically reinforce traditional boundaries? The debate continues, a testament to the complex psychology stitched into the seams of these simple cotton garments. So you lie down, the high neck of your nightgown feeling both protective and restrictive. The weight of the fabric is considerable, a tangible blanket of social expectation. You are trussed in virtue, buttoned into propriety. The room is dark, the house is silent, but the rules are wide awake. As you close your eyes, the crisp cotton encasing you from throat to ankle feels less like a comfort and more like a solemn, nightly duty. Section 10. The high neckline of your modest Victorian nightdress feels less like a personal choice and more like a family uniform. Because in this era of industry and empire, even the most private garment has a very public job to do. You are no longer just a woman going to bed, you are a representative of your household's wealth, status, and social standing. The nightdress you wear, particularly if you are a lady of means, is a crucial piece of a larger collection called a trousseau, and it speaks volumes before you even utter a word. Your trousseau, assembled in anticipation of marriage, is a public display of your family's preparation for your new life. It's paraded for the inspection of your future in-laws, and nestled within the piles of linens and day dresses are your night dresses. These are not the simple, utilitarian garments of the past. They are elaborate confections of the finest materials. You run your fingers over a bodice of delicate whitework embroidery, a pattern of vines and flowers so intricate it must have taken a seamstress weeks. You feel the crispness of expensive Swiss organdy, the whisper softness of Irish linen, the luxurious sheen of silk. The message is clear. The family that can afford such finery for the unseen parts of life is a family of immense substance and taste. The level of detail is a direct indicator of your social altitude. A nightdress for a middle-class bride might have a simple tucked front and a bit of lace at the cuffs. Yours, however, is a masterpiece. It features layers of lace insertion, pin-tucks sewn with impossibly small stitches, ribbons woven through hand-embroidered eyelets, and perhaps even a monogram discreetly stitched on the hem. It's a billboard of your refinement. The fact that this exquisite garment will only be seen by you, your maid, and your husband is precisely what makes it such a powerful status symbol. It's discretionary spending on a grand scale, proof that your family's wealth runs so deep it can be lavished on private luxuries. Now, for a wonderfully specific and slightly heartbreaking detail. The whiteness of these elaborate nightdresses was paramount, symbolizing purity. But achieving and maintaining that brilliant white for a full trousseau was a monumental task that fell to the household staff. The most prized nightdresses were often laundered with a secret ingredient, the bluing agent, a faintly tinted liquid or block that was added to the final rinse. This countered the slight yellowing of the white fabric, making it appear brighter and whiter to the eye. It was a trick of the light, a visual enhancement to uphold the perfect image of the woman who would wear it. The purity was, quite literally, tinted. Of course, scholars are still debating the economic reality behind these lavish trousseaux. While the ideal was certainly this display of excess, how much debt did a middle-class family incur to present a suitable collection? Were the most elaborate items perhaps only one or two show pieces, with the rest of the nightwear being more practical? The analysis of household accounts and personal diaries reveals a spectrum of practice, a reminder that the pressure to keep up appearances in Victorian society could be as financially constricting as the corsets were physically. So you carefully hang your embroidered nightdress in the armoire, its sheer sleeves looking like folded wings. It is more than sleepwear, it is an asset, a piece of social currency. As you prepare for bed, slipping into this beautiful, burdensome garment, you are enacting a ritual of class. Every rustle of the fine fabric, every glimpse of the intricate embroidery in the mirror, reinforces the world you belong to. The night may be for rest, but your nightdress never sleeps. It is always working, always telling its story of wealth, purity, and unshakable social position. Section 11. The weight of your embroidered trousseau nightdress is a tangible reminder of the handcrafted luxury that defined the elite. But outside your well-appointed bedroom, the world is shuddering with the relentless rhythm of steam engines and the clatter of machinery. The Industrial Revolution is reaching its peak, and its long, mechanical fingers are about to touch even the most intimate corners of your life, making the idea of a proper Victorian nightgown accessible in a way it never was before. You are no longer solely reliant on a skilled seamstress or the limited, expensive stock of a small shop. The invention and refinement of the sewing machine, followed by the popularization of commercially produced paper patterns, are democratizing fashion. You, or more likely a maid or a female relative with newfound sewing efficiency, can now create a nightgown that follows the latest, modest styles with a speed and precision that was once unimaginable. The intricate tucks, the precise sleeves, the perfectly fitted bodice, all of these are now achievable by a competent home seamstress using a tissue paper guide from a company like Butrick. The look of respectable nightwear is being standardized and disseminated to the burgeoning middle classes. This industrialization means that the symbolic value of the nightgown shifts. It is no longer just about displaying immense wealth, but about displaying respectability. A woman who owns a nightgown that conforms to the proper style, high-necked, wrist-length, made of good white cotton, is a woman who understands and adheres to the social codes of the time. She is modern, she is moral, and she is managing her household correctly. The factory-woven fabric and the machine-sewn seams become the invisible building block of her virtue. The nightgown becomes a uniform of middle-class assimilation. Now, for a wonderfully ironic piece of trivia. The very paper patterns that helped standardize this modest look also contained the seeds of its eventual transformation. On the same pages advertising patterns for high-necked nightdresses, companies also offered patterns for the new, healthier undergarments that were beginning to challenge the corset. And the illustrations on the pattern envelopes, while demure, began to create a new fantasy, one of the beautiful, well-dressed woman in her private boudoir. This commercial imagery, aimed at selling patterns, was quietly starting to create a market for nightwear as something to be seen and appreciated, a notion that would blossom later. This leads to a nuanced debate among historians of technology and fashion. While the sewing machine is universally acknowledged as a revolution, some argue that the widespread adoption of standardized paper patterns had an even greater social impact. The machine gave the means, but the patterns provided the model. They didn't just make sewing faster, they taught a whole generation of women, from diverse backgrounds, how to construct the same fashionable, respectable garments, effectively creating a national, and later international, visual language of dress, even for the bedroom. So you look at the new nightgown laid out on your bed, it seems straight and strong, its tucks perfectly even, all thanks to the whir of a sewing machine and the guidance of a tissue paper template. It is a product of its age, orderly, efficient, and impeccably proper. As you slip it on, the familiar high neck and long sleeves envelop you. It may not have the hand-embroidered finery of a trousseau piece, but it carries its own power few. L message. You are a modern woman, living in an age of progress, and your respectability is now, quite literally, machine-made. Section 12. The crisp, machine-sewn seams of your respectable cotton nightgown are a testament to modern progress. But progress, in the Victorian era, does not always equate to comfort, at least, not in the way we might understand it. For while the cut of your nightwear has been standardized by industry, the battle against the pervasive, bone-deep chill of a 19th century home is still fought with a weapon from a much older arsenal. You are about to become intimately acquainted with the itchy, uncompromising embrace of flannel. As you prepare for bed, you might layer a flannel nightdress over your cotton one, or perhaps you own a dedicated, thick flannel nightgown. This is not a garment chosen for its softness or its aesthetic appeal. It is chosen for its fierce, practical warmth. Woven from wool, flannel is a brushed fabric that traps body heat with tenacious efficiency. In a bedroom where the fire has died down and frost patterns lace the inside of the window panes, flannel is the difference between a shivering, sleepless night and one of passable warmth. It is a functional, no-nonsense barrier against a very real physical discomfort. This widespread adoption of flannel nightwear was heavily tied to the era's growing preoccupation with health, particularly the theory that cold and damp were direct causes of illness. Doctors and health manuals of the time vigorously promoted the wearing of flannel next to the skin, especially in winter, to ward off everything from rheumatism to consumption. It became a symbol of sensible, responsible self-care. To be a good Victorian, to be prudent and health-conscious, meant enduring the faint, persistent prickling of wool against your skin for the greater good of your constitution. Your flannel nightgown was your personal, poor table health spa, albeit a very scratchy one. Now, for a detail that will make your skin crawl in sympathy. The quality of flannel varied dramatically. The finest, softest flannel, made from merino wool, was a luxury for the wealthy. But the flannel available to the average middle-class family was often coarse, thick, and could feel like being wrapped in a friendly but overly enthusiastic hair shirt. To mitigate the itch, some women wore a light cotton shift underneath their flannel nightgown, creating a complex system of layers that was warm but restrictive. And when washed, unless handled with extreme care, this utilitarian fabric could shrink and become even stiffer, transforming from a protective layer into something resembling friendly, wearable cardboard. Historians find a rich point of contention in the flannel phenomenon. While its use for nightwear is well documented, there is a lively debate about its true ubiquity and how it was perceived across different social classes. Was it worn willingly as a sensible health measure, or was it endured as a necessary evil, a scratchy penance for the sake of one's lungs? Diaries and letters from the period reveal a spectrum of responses, from grateful appreciation of its warmth to grumbling complaint about its texture, a reminder that historical experiences are rarely unanimous. So you climb into your cold bed, the heavy weight of the flannel settling around you. At first, the itch is all you can focus on, 1,000 tiny protests from your skin. But slowly, as your body heat builds beneath the dense weave, a deep, radiating warmth begins to seep into your bones. The fabric, once an irritant, becomes a cocoon. The frost on the window no longer seems so threatening. You are armored in practicality, wrapped in the era's best understanding of wellness. It's not luxurious, it's not particularly comfortable, but in the deep silence of the winter night, your scratchy flannel nightgown feels, undeniably, like a lifesaver. Section 13. The heavy, scratchy warmth of your flannel nightgown is a fortress against the cold, a testament to Victorian practicality. But as the 19th century enters its final few decades, a subtle, almost hesitant, revolution begins to stir within the tightly laced confines of the bedroom. It's a rebellion not of cut or fabric, but of color. For generations, the nightgown has been a bastion of symbolic white. Now, you notice a faint, daring blush at the edges. It might begin with something almost imperceptible. A ribbon, the palest shade of shell pink, threaded through the eyelets at the neck of your otherwise white nightdress. Or perhaps a delicate sprig of forget-me-nots, embroidered in the softest blue silk thread, nestled among the usual white work. This is not the bold, confident color that will come later. This is color as a whisper, a secret shared between you and your mirror. It's a tiny crack in the monochromatic wall of modesty, a first, tentative step towards expressing something personal, something beyond purity and respectability, in the most private of garments. This introduction of subtle color is deeply connected to the new aniline dyes that were invented mid-century, creating a whole new spectrum of vibrant, affordable hues. But it took time for these colors to be deemed acceptable for something as symbolically loaded as women's nightwear. The pale pinks, lavenders, and blues were safe. They were seen as delicate, feminine, and still refined. They allowed a woman to feel slightly less like a monument to virtue and a little more like an individual with a preference, a personality, even in her sleep. Your nightdress is no longer just a uniform, it is becoming an expression of a private self. Now, for a wonderfully specific piece of social high story. Where did this color most often appear? On the ribbons. These were not just decorative, they were functional, used as drawers rings at the neck and wrists. A fashion-forward woman, or one with a slightly more liberal household, might have a small collection of these ribbons in different colors, pale yellow, sky blue, mauve, to switch out, subtly altering the character of her nightdress without the expense of a new one. It was a manageable, affordable foray into personal style, a tiny palette for self-expression in a world of overwhelming white. Unsurprisingly, this subtle shift did not go unnoticed by social commentators. There is a fascinating debate among historians about the initial reception of these colored accents. Were they widely embraced as a pretty novelty, or were they viewed with suspicion by the more conservative guardians of morality as a slippery slope toward decadence and a dangerous attention to the self? The very fact that the colors were so pale and discreet suggests a need to placate these fears, a careful negotiation between the desire for beauty and the rigid demands of propriety. So you look at your reflection, the blush pink ribbon, a soft contrast against the white cotton. It feels like a small act of defiance, a secret you carry into the night. As you extinguish the gas lamp, the color vanishes in the darkness, but the knowledge of it remains. That tiny splash of pink is a herald, a promise of a future where nightwear could be not just pure, not just warm, not just respectable, but also personally, joyfully yours. The long reign of stark white is finally, quietly, beginning to wane. Section 14. The memory of that pale pink ribbon is like a forgotten dream, a hint of the personal yet to come. But before we cross the threshold into the 20th century, there is one last, breathtaking peak of Victorian bedtime elegance to scale, a garment that is the absolute antithesis of the scratchy flannel nightgown and the modest white cotton one. You are in a lady's boudoir in the 1890s, and you are not dressing for sleep. You are dressing for the art of being seen in a state of beautiful disarray. You are slipping into the peignoir. The peignoir, meaning to comb one's hair in French, is the ultimate morning robe. It is an outer layer, worn over your actual night dress, and it is designed for utter, breathtaking impracticality. Imagine the finest, most ethereal fabric you can, sheer silk chiffon, delicate lace, gossamer thin batiste. The peignoir is a cascade of this material, often trailing behind you on the floor. It features wide, flowing sleeves, elaborate lace appliques, and ribbons that tie in soft, generous bows. Its purpose is not warmth or modesty, but to create a vision of the lady of the house in her private, unguarded moments. This is the pinnacle of the bedroom as staged concept. The peignoir was for lounging in your boudoir after rising, for taking your morning chocolate, or for receiving your closest female friends or, perhaps, your husband. It was a performance of delicate, romantic femininity. The sheer fabrics hinted at the nightdress beneath while artfully obscuring it, creating a look that was both covered and suggestive, innocent and alluring. In your peignoir, you are a masterpiece of the domestic sphere, a living painting entitled A Morning. Now, for a brilliantly absurd piece of practical reality. Maintaining this vision of clue. D-like perfection was a logistical nightmare. These garments were devastatingly delicate. They could be torn by a careless ring, snagged on a piece of furniture, or permanently stained by a drop of water. They required specialized care, hand washing in specific solutions, painstaking drying, and careful storage. The peignoir was a testament to a woman's distance from any form of manual labor. It was a garment that proclaimed she had a small army of maids to handle the tedious business of keeping her beautiful. It was luxury defined by its high maintenance. This leads to a delightful academic debate. Art historians and fashion scholars often argue about the primary artistic influence on the peignoir's aesthetic. Was it a direct descendant of the 18th century Watteau gown, with its similar flowing back? Or was it more heavily influenced by the costumes of the aesthetic movement and the pre-Raphaelite painters, who idealized a kind of loose, romantic, historically inspired dress for women? The peignoir sits at a fascinating crossroads, blending 18th century elegance with 19th century romanticism, and its precise lineage is a matter of genteel scholarly dispute. So you drape the sheer, lace-trimmed silk of the peignoir over your shoulders, feeling its weightless burden. It floats around you as you move to your dressing table, a soft rustle marking your passage. You are not dressed for the outside world, nor are you dressed for sleep. You are in a liminal space, a private world of leisure and beauty. As you sit and pick up your hairbrush, the peignoir pools around you on the floor, a final, extravagant sigh of the Victorian era, a dream of silk and lace before the modern world, with its world wars and its ready-to-wear, comes knocking at the bedroom door. Section 15. The last whisper of your silk peignoir settles into silence, a final, elegant echo of a world about to be shattered. You stand at the very edge of the 19th century, on the precipice of the 1900s. The weight of all those layers, the linen shift, the flannel fortress, the corseted nightdress, the performative peignoir, hangs in the air around you. But a new wind is blowing, carrying with it the sounds of factories, the rumble of suffrage marches, and the distant, grim foreshadowing of global conflict. The Victorian nightgown, with all its rules and restrictions, is about to be loosened, thread by thread. You can feel the constraints beginning to strain. The same paper patterns that once standardized the high-necked gown are now starting to offer alternatives. The health reform movement is gaining traction, openly criticizing the corset and championing looser, more rational dress for women, even at night. New attitudes about the body, about women's roles, and about the very nature of comfort are percolating up from below, ready to challenge centuries of tradition. The world is speeding up, and the elaborate, time-consuming rituals of Victorian dressing and undressing are starting to feel like an anchor, holding you back from a faster, more dynamic future. The most profound agent of change, however, will be the cataclysm of the First World War. It's a horror we can't yet see from this 1890s doorway, but its effects will be revolutionary. With men away at the front, women will step into factories, fields, and hospitals. They will need practical, functional clothing. They will experience a new sense of autonomy and physical freedom. The delicate, high-maintenance peignoir and the restrictive, multi-layered nightdress will become incompatible with this new reality. The war will not just change borders, it will change the very fabric of daily life, democratizing simplicity and making practicality a virtue, not a compromise. Now, for a final, poignant piece of trivia that bridges the two eras. In the immediate years before the war, a new fabric began to make appearances in the most fashionable nightwear, artificial silk, which would later be known as rayon. It was a product of chemical ingenuity, an attempt to mimic the luxury of silk at a lower cost. It was a harbinger of the 20th century synthetic miracles, a first, tentative step towards the age of nylon and polyester. Yet, it was still often made up in the styles of the passing Victorian age. It was the old world, dressed in the material of the new. Historians, of course, are still debating the precise moment when the Victorian ideal truly gave way. Was it the outbreak of war in 1914? Was it the granting of suffrage to women? Or was it a slower, cultural shift that took place over the first 2 decades of the new century? The transition is never a clean break, but a messy, overlapping process where old habits cling on even as new ones are born. The debate continues, as nuanced and layered as the garments themselves. So you stand there, in your white nightdress, on the threshold. Behind you stretches the long, intricate history of the nightgown, from the simple shift to the elegant peignoir. Before you lies the unknown, the short, shift-like chemises of the 1920s, the sleek satin of the 1930s, the practical pajamas of the war years. The journey of what we wear to bed is not over, it is simply turning a page. The light is changing, the world is shifting, and the body, for so long bound and concealed, is about to step into a new kind of freedom. And so, the story of your nightgown drifts away, not with a final stitch, but with a slow, soft unraveling. Those layers of linen and lace, of flannel and ribbon, they begin to feel less like fabric and more like whispers from a dream you are gently waking from. The high necklines loosen their hold, the long sleeves recede, the crisp white of it all softens into the muted colors of a pre-dawn sky. You can let go of the weight of all those centuries now, let them settle like dust motes in a sliver of moonlight. The rustle of silk becomes the sound of leaves outside your window, the scratch of wool becomes the faint, rhythmic hum of the world at rest. There is no more debate, no more history, only the deep, quiet comfort of your own bed, the gentle weight of your own blanket, and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath. The journey is complete, the lights are dimmed, and the past has gently tucked you in, leaving you to float in the peaceful, timeless space between stories and sleep.